So about 20 years ago or so, the human genome was sequenced, and everyone thought, once we have that, we will solve all diseases. We would cure cancer, for instance. And with your project, it's like once we have the genome of all the species, we will be able to do that. So two questions, like how do you know you're right in that sense, and you mentioned the comparative approach. Why do you think that's the right approach to make progress in this field?
Yeah. So to your first question, the important thing to realize is that a genome is a sequence of DNA, and so sequencing the genome means you're reading the DNA, and then you use computer programs to tell you which parts code for genes, which then code for proteins, which parts are related to the regulation of genes, and then control which genes are turned on, where and when, how much, and so forth, and then which parts of the genome we don't understand or may actually have no function at all, might be evolutionary relics. So that's what a genome is. And DNA, as the late biologist Edward Wilson said, DNA is the part of biology furthest away from the biological traits of interest, like behavior, like development, like crop yield, whatever species you're thinking about. There's so many levels of biology that exist between these two. Let's take my field, social behavior. You have DNA, and then you have RNA and protein, and that is all in a brain. So you have brain regions, you have circuits in the brain. Biology is a science that has to do with levels, hierarchical levels of organization. And so having a sequence is just the beginning. You can't cure cancer with just a sequence of the human genome. It provides the basics for tools to be developed to be able to understand what happens when genes are turned on and turned off, which genes, which parts of the regulation of genes are involved, and so on and so forth. So similarly, having the genome sequences of all the species on the planet will not lead to instant enlightenment. That's not the claim we are making. But again, I use the library analogy. You have to go to the library, you have to read it, you have to understand it, you have to draw upon knowledge from other sources to be able to get something from a book. And so it's that kind of perspective. The second question about the comparative approach is that evolution is a conservative force, and what works well is conserved. And so you find in many organisms. And so you have an amplification of the signal when you use the comparative approach. So the yin and yang of biology has to do with similarities and differences. Biology is all about understanding commonalities among species, universals, if you will, and also differences. So it's not one or the other, it's both. It's the yin and yang of biology, similarities and differences. Genomes can allow you to explore both spaces broadly. So you can look for genes that are similar across different species, and if those genes are there and they're doing similar things in many different species, there is a really good chance that that's a very, very important thing that has to be present in organisms. Likewise, if you're looking at two different kinds of organisms, you hone in on the differences and you say, oh, maybe that's what makes these, whether it's species that are differences or even individuals different. So the comparative approach gives you that ability to explore both similarities and differences, which are really the heart, the root of biology.